So you've been doing this VO thing for a while now, and you feel like you're not getting anywhere with it. Now, whether you're doing it for money or fame, I guess, or just doing it as a hobby, there comes a time where you look at where you are and what you're doing, and you might feel like you're just stuck. Like there's something between you and moving forward or taking that next step. And if you're asking yourself that question, there probably is. And it's probably not the person you expected it to be. We'll talk about that on the other side. Don't go anywhere.
You, all right? I learned it by watching you.
How you doing, everybody? Andrew Scott, and you are back at Booth Camp. Well, I hope everybody is having a nice transitional period from summer to fall. And transitioning from summer to fall here in the Pacific Northwest for the past decade or so, generally speaking, means that we're no longer on fire and we're bracing for the floods. But I'll take the floods right now. We could use the rain. So as I said in the opener, there comes a time in every VO person's life where they step back a little bit and they look at where they are, what they're doing or what they're accomplishing, and they feel like they're not moving forward, or at least not moving forward as fast as they'd like to. Now, look, we all want our Oompa Loompa now, right? Everybody is a little bit impatient that way. And, we all feel that if we work hard, success should come. And that's not an unreasonable way to look at it, but it might not necessarily always be the most realistic way to look at it. So if you feel that something's in the way or in between you and taking that next step or moving forward, it might be you. So if you've been following me for a while, or if maybe you're in the Booth Camp Discord, or you're in one of the online forums that I moderate all over the interwebs about VO, you'll probably have heard me use this phrase, get out of your own way. Gotta stop doing that. Stop doing that. What exactly do I mean by that, and how does it really apply here in this discussion? VO, like anything else, is a process. You'll often hear us refer to doing VO as caught myself, bunny. You'll often have heard many people refer to it as the VO journey. Now, that sounds all like warm and squishy and tree-hugging hippie, but there's some real solid truth there. This whole process of getting into home VO really is a journey. And we use that as a way to illustrate that it's a continuous process of moving from one point to another. And like any journey, there's going to be obstacles. But honestly, the number one obstacle in any journey is generally you. And when you step back and you take a minute to analyze your VO business or your VO pursuit, and you analyze every little part of it, my gear, my environment, my training, my aptitude, my talent, my skill, my artistry, all those different moving parts that make, whack the lens, that make your VO process. And you look at all those different moving parts with some sense of objectivity and dispassion. And you can legitimately say, that's working, that's on point, I'm comfortable with where that is right now, this is good, this needs work. But generally speaking, all of them are pretty much where they're supposed to be. And yet you're still not making that progress that you want. Then you kind of have to, by process of elimination, go, maybe it's me. This is super common. And honestly, if you get to that point and you're willing to ask yourself, is it me? That's actually a good place to be. So many people take themselves out of the equation. Well, it can't be me. Yeah, it totally can be. Now, this isn't a fault or blame thing either. You're part of the equation. You're a big part of your equation when it comes to success or fulfillment or progress or however you want to measure it. And if you refuse to analyze yourself in the equation, then you're not analyzing the equation. You're analyzing all the other disparate parts of it, but you're not looking at it as a whole thing. And it is a whole thing, and it has to be a whole thing. So you need to be willing to do that. But what do I mean, getting out of your own way? Well, in a previous video, I was talking about people being scared of really letting go on the mic and exploring the entire landscape of both their voice and their read and their personality when they're recording. And that's definitely a version of being in your own way, being fearful of unabashedly addressing the microphone and throwing many different reads against the wall to see if they stick, okay? But in the larger sense, what does it mean to be in your own way when it comes to you and your voiceover pursuits? Now, I also want to point out that I said pursuits here because I'm also talking about people who do this for fun, VO as a hobby, which is a real thing and it's awesome. But when I'm speaking of being in your own way, here are a couple things that I want you to take into consideration. Number one, home VO, especially, in this day and age now where we're, hopefully on the back end of a pandemic, but it can be a very insular experience. It can be a very insular pursuit. We squirrel ourselves away in these tiny little rooms, tiny little boxes, or, little forts made out of PVC and moving blankets, or, rooms that used to be storage but are now a studio. Oh. It can be really insular. You can feel really siloed. And that's not good. That's not good for your pursuit, and it's also not good for your analysis. Because for as dispassionate about yourself as you might be, you're never going to be that good at it. So popping yourself up out of your own hole, getting your head out of your box, is a really important way to help get out of your own way. And here's why. Listening to yourself hour after hour, day after day, gets really draining. It gets really grating. And also, at some point, it stops being helpful. You can listen to yourself with as critical an ear as you can muster, moment to moment, and it's still not the same as getting another pair of ears to listen to what you've done. That's why I say one of the best techniques to help you get out of your own way and make progress in VO is by joining a community. Now, it doesn't need to necessarily be a VO-specific community, although for the most part, that's kind of what I'm going to suggest, because it really is the most helpful. You need to find peers. You need to find other ears. So, peers with ears? Yeah. There's a 80s music reference there that I'm going to bypass. But getting other people to jump in with you or jumping in with other people, it helps you broaden your view on your own pursuit and what you're doing. Because if you sit there by yourself, eventually you're just going to I'm just going to say this, you're just going to kind of get depressed at where you are. Part of that is because you don't have other opinions about what you're doing. But the other part of it is you don't have anybody else to hold you up. I do plenty of, I'm going to just say it this way, I do plenty of garbage reads to my ears. But when I throw it out to a group of peers, they're able to show me things or point to things about it that I didn't catch, that are worthwhile, that are useful to my process, that are solid things to build upon. And I wouldn't get that if I wasn't in a community, or at least have somebody else to bounce something off of. But being in a community of like-minded people or people with like pursuits also just helps you stay fresh about it. You know, one day you're really down in the dumps and one of your compatriots comes along and holds you up or points to something that was good about a thing that you felt was garbage. That helps. And then the next day you're there for them, or you're having a good day, but you can see that somebody else is struggling and you're able to lend them a hand. And that's really validating. That is really refreshing. And I mean refreshing in like the browser tab sense. Reset. Start an analysis from a different point of view, from a fresh slate. Absolutely invaluable. It keeps you moving forward. Might be baby steps, but baby steps turn into grown-up steps at some point in the future. At least that's the hope. So here's another aspect of not being so deeply down in a silo. If you're just doing work by yourself all the time, old or bad habits can easily creep in. And when they do, and they're not caught or pointed out or corrected, they become subliminally reinforced in your mind. And that which is subliminally reinforced in your mind grows stronger. So, not working with other people, or at least in connection with other people, really tends to let those bad habits fall down like weed seeds. They're gonna spring up more and stronger. So, having other people to riff off of, or ask for impressions from, or ask for advice from, or even just a, hey, can you check this for me, really helps you stay away from that bad habit rut. And we all are susceptible to falling into that rut, no question. So another aspect of this, and this is, I can't tell you how common this is. You're starting to get really down because peers of yours are getting work or getting cast, and you're not. It's really easy to start getting bitter about that. But you know what? It's hard to get bitter at a friend, at somebody who's helped you out. And I find it really valuable to stay in touch with people who are further along the path than I am. If anything, because of what it engenders in me when I see a friend of mine succeed. If you continually look at every other voice talent that is in your purview as a competitor, as competition, you won't have the ability to look at them and to them as inspiration. Now, generally speaking, a lot of people will blame me for being a pessimist, but I actually like to think of myself as both a realist and an optimist. So I guess what, a realistic optimist? Optimistic realist? Whatever. Now, it would be easy for you to, through some analysis, look at them and go, well, what are they doing that I'm not doing? But instead, look at it as, what are they doing that I can do, that I can model, that I can copy? Not in a steely kind of copy way, but in an emulation way, in an implementation way. You know, there's an old saying, if you want to be successful, model yourself on success. So, watching or observing somebody else's process can be really helpful. And to be perfectly honest, So many people in the home VO industry are more than willing to share their process with you, to talk to you about what they do, how they do it, and how they got to where they are. Now, you don't need to be fixated on the success part. Really, what I want you to be looking at is, again, with the journey analogy, this is like having somebody just slightly more experienced than you being the first person walking that hiking path. They know a little bit more, they've got a little bit more experience, but you're on the same path, you're on the same journey. So you have the ability to check in with them 10, 15, 20 paces ahead of you and say, how's the terrain up there? Hey, I saw you do this. Is there a reason for that? Anybody who's on a journey with you is going to be willing to share that information with you because they don't want you to suffer. And that's helpful because, again, the journey is the thing. And being able to ask those questions of somebody else is extraordinarily helpful. You know, there's a very famous saying, it was attributed to Albert Einstein, but there's a question as to whether or not that's true. Regardless, the sentiment is right. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. I've lived that. So if you look at the journey as a process, your process, how you're doing what you're doing, how you are pursuing your pursuit, I guess. If you keep on doing the same thing over and over again, if you are, all day sitting there doom scrolling P2P sites and not getting any traction, or putting in auditions for, fan dubs and things like that, not hearing back from anybody. If you just keep doing that, trying to muscle through, well, I'll give you a pat on the back for persistence, but trying to muscle through a brick wall is not particularly smart business or good for your mental health. At some point, you have to be willing to step back and say, what can I do differently? Doing something differently brings a different set of eyes. Yeah, they're still your eyes, but they're looking at something from a different angle because you've thrown another variable in there. Again, freshening things up, refreshing things. Not starting from zero, but clearing that page and starting over. It can really be the thing that changes everything for you. That's helpful. And remember, being entrenched, deeply entrenched in something, whether it be a belief or a methodology or a niche, being entrenched keeps you entrenched. That's the definition of entrenched. You need to be willing to be flexible with your own process. You need to be willing to look at what you're doing and how you're trying to do it and go, maybe I'm not doing it wrong, but maybe there's just a better way to pursue this. Now, I made a differentiation before between people doing VO as a hobby and doing VO trying to build a business and trying to make it a career. Both of those pursuits are similar yet different. And throwing something different in it is also different. If you're doing it as a hobby, are you looking into things like read groups, practice groups, free online training and classes, things like that? If you're doing it, trying to do it as a career, are you treating it as a career? Are you looking at those same things, but kind of one step further up the ladder? Are you looking at getting into real acting classes? Are you looking at pursuing some kind of online training for audio engineering or your DAW? Those things right there are also fresheners. I mean, I'm very, very good at the DAW that I use. I'm known for it. I teach people how to use it myself. But at least once a year, I take a new class by a new educator about my old DAW. And I guarantee you, every single year, I find something new about it. I learn a new technique or a new way of processing audio that takes my game one step further up that ladder. Absolutely invaluable. And that leads me to my final point. We all have this idea when we're learning that the goal of learning is to know a thing, to get it down and know it. But if you start looking at learning as a journey, learning is the thing. The journey is the thing, not the end point. The end point is always moving. The end point is always changing. You get to one place and you go, here I am. So what are you going to do? Stay there forever? Moving forward insists on changing your place. So when you're learning about something, when you're learning about VO, or you're learning about audio editing, or you're learning about video making, the moment you think, aha, I've got it, you have that eureka moment, you're not done. You should never be done. You should never be done learning. You should never be done with the process. You should never be done with the journey. It's a never-ending thing. And that's good news, not bad news. Because it means there's always something new to learn. There's always something new to practice. There's always a new way to learn and practice. There's always a new way to get better at what you do. I said in a previous video, talent can be nurtured, but you need to be willing to be nurtured. You need to be willing to step back from your process and go, I can do that differently. Not better, differently. Because better comes after you've done it differently and you go, I like that. Or, yeah, I like that. The journey is the thing. Sappy, but totally true. If you are looking for a community, come and join us on the Booth Camp Discord server. We're growing by leaps and bounds, and we'd love to have you come along with us on this journey. But until next time, folks, I'm Andrew Scott, and you've been at Booth Camp. See you later, everybody. Bye-bye. I'm recording. It's okay. Just let me finish. 10 minutes tops. Home is where the heart is. No, home is where the noise is.
You're dismissed.